Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It means the world. Thank you very, very much. And today we have another part three today. Someone who I'm delighted to have back on today, a prima facie advocate, expert in the industry about mental health, and just a big lover of the arts in general, and now turned author as well with her debut book, which is right here, Sex, Power and Prima Facie, When Art Becomes Activism and the Creatress Rises, by the brilliant Cassandra Woodhouse. And I think really to something different today, so to introduce things today, I'm going to read you a little segment of the book here, which will tee up our conversation for part three of this brilliant, brilliant play. So in Cassandra's words, because the real work does not end when performance ends, it continues in how we live, how we love, how we raise our children, how we honor our bodies, how we listen when someone finally finds the courage to speak. Art opened the door. Embodiment and activism taught me how to walk through it. And this book is an invitation for you to do the same. In your own way, in your own body, in your own time. If there's one truth that carried me from stage to these pages, it is this. Healing is not about erasing what happened, it's about reclaiming who we are beneath it. Art gave me a language, my body gave me the wisdom, and this book is my offering back. To the survivors, to the artists, to the next generation, and to the part of you that already knows, your voice matters, your body remembers, and you are worthy of care, always, and you are never alone. Cassandra, welcome back.
Thank you. Wow, that's beautiful hearing it in your words.
Yeah,
Or
how are you?
in your voice. I'm good. I'm good.
You guys,
How
welcome
are you?
back. Like one of the
Yay.
your joint most welcome back guests so far.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I love it, man.
wonderful.
It's
Very,
brilliant.
yay.
So I suppose really, you've come off the back of your part three of the Prima Facie tour. How's it been?
It's been a whirlwind. It's my third year touring the show
Hmm.
and across New Zealand, and to be able to get it in really small rural towns who don't get access to this type of thing or
Hmm.
theatre in general, and to be able to bring them a show like Prima Facie and have them experience that is was always my intention. It was always my intention to get it into those smaller towns because I feel really passionate about these stories being accessible to everybody. And I know, this is accessible on NT Live, and but to be able to get it into the room and have people experience this live was, yeah, it's pretty special.
Yeah, I suppose like a big question for today because I know we talked last time about the nervous system and learning all about it as well. So yeah, how is your nervous system now after three rounds of this?
Well, look, what I've learned so wholeheartedly is that the body keeps the score, and two, the body's got its own timeline. I think it's been 3 weeks now since I performed the show, and I was doing really well. Like I thought, oh, I'm this is, it's shedding off me quite smoothly considering. But the past week it's hit me. So just extreme, and that just shows you that the body's got its own processes of decompressing things. I feel like I've been having decompression dreams, like I dream things, and I think, yeah, the nervous system and just your subconscious from living this story. I did so this tour I've just done was nearly 30 shows in 30 days in 30 different venues.
Ouch.
So I think that's something that doesn't quite land unless they tell people. I think no, that what that meant was driving about 4 hours to a new venue in the morning, packing the show in, doing the show, doing a Q&A, because you were in these small towns where people really wanted to talk about it afterwards, packing the show out, trying to go to sleep straight away in a bed that wasn't your own, a different motel every night, waking up the next morning, getting on the road, doing it again. And then just having to adjust to every theatre we were in, and some were beautiful grand opera houses, some were literally like a little cafe where we
Wow.
had to where people had their beer on the stage or their legs on the stage, and I'm like,
You're like,
it. I had to my only back door, my only backstage was a little broom cupboard that I had to pop out from. So the extremes of where I have done this show is incredible. But I also, what the hard thing with that is you're not around your resources so much to take care of yourself. So normally that the cortisol and the adrenaline that I get from doing the show, I'm able to sort of get up and metabolize through movement each day. But because I was always on the road, I didn't have much time to do that. So yeah, so it's only natural that my body's having this response, and I'm just honoring it. And I think it's I'm also trying to look at it as a beautiful reflection of what I actually gave. I think it's a big, it's the receipts of
Yeah.
the taxes I paid to that I put my body through and my heart through, and yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's what we do, and but I think it's made me we've talked about this before, I'm sure, but it's made me very passionate about supporting artists and the work that we do, because our hearts really are on loan for these stories, and our body might know we're telling a story, but our mind might know, but our bodies go through it like it's happening to us. And a show like this, it's just undeniable. I'd be curious to know other people who have performed the show whether they go through the same thing, but yeah, I think this particular show is not one that you leave unscathed.
Definitely not. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really does. The mind, the soul, and everything in between. Again, it's one of Tessa's lines again.
Yes.
Yeah, it's it's a huge thing. What you've done, and I think having been through this experience now 3 times, and then you have these periods where you deregulate yourself and look after yourself. What have you found is the best way to re-regulate your nervous system and to sort of get you back on track, to get back to Cassandra?
Um, it's such a good question, and it's just a continuous. It's a continual discovery. I think not trying to not not trying to deny what is happening, like, and push through it, and actually just allow things to settle and trust that they will. Like I said to you before, I've been here before. I know that this sort of fatigue and um, exhaustion of everything is, I've been here before, so I know it will pass. And just being kind to myself, and listening to myself and doing what I need to do. I'm sleeping a lot.
Good.
Which is very unusual for me, and my normal sort of drive to just go, 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 and get on to the next thing, and hustle, and that I've just really allowed myself to just, if I don't feel like doing anything, don't. But again, I think it's what's never talked about in the arts. Like we hear, whether we're making movies that move us, or TV shows that we're in, or these shows that we do, that they yeah, I think there needs to be more awareness of what actors put themselves through, and having the support,
Mm.
because it's very holistic as well, because we think, well, it's a different realm of work, in the sense of you can't just do something like I've just done and then come back and jump into another job. But that's the reality of life, is you need to work, but you have to be able to. So when we think of, goes to a whole other conversation, but the financial support of artists, and I think all that needs to be accounted for.
Mm.
And yeah, it saddens me that it's not, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think more support needs to be given um, to artists, and what we do.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And like I said before, I think the toll that it's taken is a reflection. I try and look at it like that as well, of just honoring that. Well, this means that you gave a lot, and that's something to be proud of. And so just telling myself being kind to myself, and not trying to push myself before I'm ready. And yeah.
Yeah.
And what gives me great strength is knowing that I might feel like this from performing a show, but I think of what survivors live with their whole lives because of what they've been through. And
Mhm.
so this might be a period of my life where I'm a little bit worn out from having to carry this story, but it's nothing to what survivors go through,
Mhm.
and and so I feel very yeah. I just think I can't complain. I can't, there's so many people living this day in, day out, and they don't
Yeah.
get to just heal from it and escape from it quickly. And um, yeah,
Yeah.
the remains in their psyche for a long, long time. And so
Yeah.
that keeps me very grounded as well.
Yeah, I imagine like, again, I know we've spoken about this before, but like on the third leg of this, meeting people after the show, because I know you
Mm.
like to sort of go into the foyer, you go into the dressing room, you do your kind of derobing, and then you go into the foyer and you meet some people, and again, we'll talk about, you mentioned this in the book as well, which is some people can go up and and say, "Can I tell you a story?" or "Can I talk to you about something?" Or some of you will just look at you, you'll look at them,
Mm.
and they'll just go, "Can I just give you a hug?"
Yeah.
And and the fact that I know what you've been through this experience of like just performing it, and again, it really was a one woman show and everything. You did everything yourself. The
Yeah.
traveling, the setting up the stage, the derobing, the everything at the end of the night.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's so much in it, and that I want to just your journey I want to share with people because what you do, you perform such a hugely mentally taxing play, and I'm sure you do it brilliantly because of all the reviews and everything. But this is what we do because we
Mm.
love what we do. Even if people go, "You're doing what? You're doing all this
Mm.
yourself? You're
Mm.
not having any help. There's no one backstage. Your family not around. No, 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 no." But why do you
No.
do it? Because this play is a calling. And I remember us talking the first time, which was uh, ironically, you said that you just finished Hannah, the other one woman show that you did, and you said,
Mm.
"I am never ever doing a one woman show again. It's too hard.
Yep.
I'm not enjoying it. It's not for me." But tell me about, because I know the first chapter, obviously, of your book actually is called "The Story That Chose Me." And so
Mm.
tell me about that moment in the cinema where you're watching Jodie doing Prima Facie for the first time. How did this story call to you exactly?
Well, it's interesting because the longer I've lived with it, the more I see that calling playing out of um, the little girl in me that knew injustice, the little girl in me that saw those things that never had a voice for so much of this stuff.
Hmm.
So I think, and that's only become more and more apparent as the years have gone on, and I've lived inside this day after day. Um, but because when I went to see it, that was my intention. I was like, whew, that was a lot because like this one, I had self-funded that one and did everything on my own, and it's if I'm honest, it's that part that's a lot. The show itself is actually quite would be quite sustainable if I had more support. And I think um, I know you interview so many people about this show, and I think that probably is really where my story is quite separate to everybody else's. Is that I literally was a one woman show creating this as well. Obviously, I had a director, but in terms of funding it, getting it to all these places, performing it, packing it in, traveling, it was me. What you see on stage is me, and what you see off stage is me. Um, so when I saw it for the first time, I just something bigger than me just was like, well, this is your next venture, and it took a while for it to manifest, and I had to actually really I had to wait for my turn for the rights. I had to and while I did that, I went to see it on Broadway, which I've
Hmm.
mentioned before, which was really because I'd seen the NT Live version. I didn't need to see it again. It's a long way from New Zealand Broadway, it's
Yeah.
expensive, it's a long way, but I went there because I was passionate about feeling the energy in the room. I wanted to feel I wanted to see if everyone else was feeling what I felt, because that's, and then when I did, I was like, there's something so much bigger at play here than the story on the stage. This is something bigger. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than sort of all of us. And um, I couldn't really I didn't know how to name that, or I didn't quite know what it was. But it's just now, it's just still revealing itself. And through doing this tour this year, what I really have seen is just the story on the stage is what it is, but the themes of it are just prevalent everywhere for women.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, it sounds quite graphic, but I really sensed, I was like, it's the rape of women in general. We're sitting here, we're doing this play, and the Epstein files are coming out, and then this online forum where 65 million men have logged in to find out how to drug their wives and sexually assault them, and it's just everywhere. And that's just sexual harm. But when you start to see when you look even beyond sexual harm, and you go, okay, well, it's also what we just expect women to do and take, and I've experienced that through this experience with doing the show is,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you can just do more, you can just be here and do this. And it's like and we're doing it to the planet, as well. We just extract and take from women in every way we can, and expect them to just go, oh, well, you'll bounce back, you'll be fine. Because we have been taught to do that. And so I think for me, it's really exposed a lot of that deeper stuff that, yes, it's the story on the stage, but I think it has resonated so deeply and continues to, because it touches on so many other things.
Mm.
And I don't know if Suzie Miller set out to write it that way, but I definitely know from living inside it night after night that it's just, you just start to see the threads of it everywhere.
Yeah.
The threads of injustice. You see injustice everywhere. You're like, oh. And then it becomes, it's hard not to become resentful. But I think, and this is why I was so passionate to write the book, because I think then it becomes, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Like, I think what I saw so much was all these things that were wrong, and there's so much injustice, and there's so much we're doing to cause harm. But I also saw this thread of wanting to be able to speak to the empowerment of what we can do about it, and the power we actually all have to create change. And we hold that. You get so many people come to the show and they're so angry afterwards because at the legal system, and I think that's what needs to change. And I get it, because that's really what the play drives home. But I think one of the things I just kept finding myself saying to people over and over again is like, yes, that's one part of it,
Mm.
but we all hold the power to change. And if we continue to just put that aside and wait for the law to change, we could be waiting generations and generations.
Mm-hmm.
But if we go, actually, we hold power, we make up a jury, we're the ones perpetuating rape myths, we are raising children, we are raising either perpetrators, or we're raising, we are raising people who are either causing this harm or helping to prevent it. So there's so many ways that I just saw hope, and I really wanted to be a voice for that, particularly because as you know from last year, I did this show in schools, and the high school students, they're hungry to change things, and they're hungry to continue the conversation, because that generation know that those things aren't okay. So it's a really interesting dynamic when you get them in an audience and the older generation in an audience and everyone in between, and everyone's got their histories that are coming together to address something that has just been brushed under the carpet for so long. And like England, New Zealand, where there's a real repression in our culture. I think Americans are a lot more outward with things, but I think, and my husband's American, so I see the difference. but I think, yeah, New Zealand is we're similar to the UK in that we repress a lot and we don't talk about a lot, and but all that is doing is protecting perpetrators and perpetuating harm. And until we call it out, until we start being able to talk about it, I think it just continues to exist. And there's just millions of stories where I've heard, sexual assault juries have not been able to believe the victim because they saw themselves represented in the perpetrator. Not that they didn't believe, but they just could not think, well, that's the guy like me. He's a dad. He couldn't have done that. They just don't, people don't want to believe this is going on. And I know it's hard, and it's like, I know it's so hard to accept that it is because it's so horrific.
Yeah.
But by burying our heads in the sand, all that's doing, it's just perpetuating it. And people don't want to talk to their kids about this stuff because they don't want to put fear into them, or they don't want to, they just don't want to think that it's going on. But what we know for sure is most harm is perpetuated by someone we know. So it's a big myth that like stranger rape is actually very, very rare. And so when we think, well, you've just got to be careful walking home at night, it's actually not just that.
It's a lot more than that. It's a lot
No,
more.
it's so much more than that. It's like, and I think it's okay to be asking, who your kids are around, or where they're going, or who will be there, and I was considered a very overprotective mother, but I look back now and I think, well, I'm glad I was, because now it's a lot more, I think, now it feels a bit more talked about, but when I think we've just, how much more evidence do we need to know that this is going on, to know that, there's, and I know it's a heavy topic, and that's what I always tried to bring to the Q&As was, this is a heavy subject, but by avoiding it, that's not helping. And there are ways to talk about it with hope and empowerment, and talking to our young people about it, and it's okay that it's awkward. It's okay that we don't have the exact, tick boxes of what to say, and it's an ongoing dialogue as well. But it's just huge. But I don't know how we detoured there, but
No. Bring it on, man.
yeah,
This is what it's for. We get everything on record. It's great. No,
yeah,
you're absolutely right. I think there's a couple of things from that. I think when I was a kid, I'd say to my mum, just like, oh, just you're so overprotective. Just why can't I do that thing? Why can't I do that? No, and now I look back, and some things I'm like, okay, right.
yeah,
I see why she
yeah,
did that now. I see why she did that
yeah.
now. Yeah, to just be clear, I've
Yeah,
never,
your mum.
exactly, yeah. I've never been
Yeah,
any trouble, thankfully, or anything kind of serious happened to me sort of like that, thankfully. But I understand now that I did another episode recently where someone called Katie she wrote a play called Fox, which is all about motherhood, and it literally like the early days of being a mum, where your child is still the size of a they're still a baby,
yeah,
but and it's like those early days where you just suddenly the worry just goes through the roof, and you're just like, and I remember someone saying, I remember some people talking one time, I'm just, it's all over, the baby's been born now, but I can stop worrying about things now. I said, like, okay, wait, can I stop you? Can I stop you there? It's like, why? You will never ever stop worrying about your family, not ever. And you're like, wow, really? Yeah. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But
yeah.
no, but 65 million. That's the
Did you hear?
population. That's the population of the UK.
Did you hear about that?
No,
Have you
no,
heard about that?
no. This is the first time I've heard of that. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and look, I don't want to butcher. I don't want to, don't quote me, but
yeah.
because I know there was if the CNN did I think it was CNN reported it. They'd done an investigation, and there was a website there was or is their website because of that, that case in France,
Mm.
Giselle, where she uh, her husband had been drugging her and then
Mm.
so like that.
God. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't, blah, 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 blah,
Oh,
blah,
right.
blah.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know
yeah,
that.
you'll find it all now.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that was obviously shocking because she. Anyway, you'll do your research on it,
Yeah.
but this exposed another website on basically, men wanting to learn and wanting to watch their wives, so women being drugged and sexually assaulted by their husbands, by other men, and it being recorded and put online. So it's basically like the new porn is that. And, so
I don't mean to
look,
laugh. I'm sorry, but it's just like,
no, and it's that thing of like, it's like I was saying before, it's when you start to peel back the onion and go, this is so rampant in so many ways and forms that we just have to start looking at one, what is causing it, two, like prevention. Like we can't keep being the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. Like how can we start changing the outcomes of this? And I think that's probably what has really sparked the most for me from doing this whole thing, because it can, obviously is a heavy subject and it can feel heavy that we don't know what to do, but I feel like that's really where there's power and going, right, how do we move forward? Being aware of this, not taking our glass, like seeing this clearly for what it is, calling out behavior. There's so much that we can do, and being aware of it is the start, I think, because for so many generations they've just gone, oh well, we just don't think about that, we don't talk about that, that's just men being men and all these things. And I watched something recently and I just, there's a part of me that thinks as much, I think as women we're actually not angry enough at what's going on.
yeah,
The fact that no one has been charged with the Epstein files, the fact that
I know.
no one will probably be charged for all this that's coming out. We live in that world. So when you do a play like Prima Facie, which is a little bit of that on a stage live in front of people, that's why it has not stopped being shown. And I did not expect to be performing the show three years later, but I honestly think it could just keep going. There's always people that are like, are you bringing it here? Or are you doing this? And I think it's a show that is just because it gives voice to so much that we are just dealing with in our, we're just dealing with it everywhere. And people survivors want to feel seen and not alone. And this play does that. It makes, that is the most beautiful part of this show that I will never forget is the survivors feeling not alone.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that to experience something that creates that is, yeah,
Yeah, it's something. It really is
it
something.
is.
You
It
know,
is.
you talk about this in the book as well, but and I've said it on here many times. I mean, despite everything, I remember saying this to Georgia Bird recently. Despite everything, I know what the toll that it's taken on you, the exhaustion and everything. The de-stressing, all that kind of stuff. Now,
Yeah.
obviously it's part of the process, but that
Yeah.
it shows that it's a job well done. But at the same time, I look at yourself, taking this tour, this show around New Zealand, doing all this stuff, meeting all these people, and giving them a Broadway show or West End show to the local community. I mean, it's something. But I look at you guys, and everyone involved in this play around the world, and I mean, you especially because you do it very much on your own. And I think it must be, despite everything, it must be such a privilege to do
Mm.
what you've done because you're changing the fucking world, Cassandra.
Oh. Oh. Yeah. I do. I think it's just such an honor
Yeah.
to. And I think, you were talking before about your mum and raising you, and you said thankfully nothing's happened to you. But I feel like, and you were telling me earlier about your experience seeing it recently live
Yeah,
and
in Liverpool, yeah.
the synchronicity around that. And I personally believe and I think it's all been put on our hearts for a reason. You too, obviously, you could have picked any show to be doing these podcasts about, but it's interesting that you keep coming back to this one
Mm,
with all the different creators and all the different incarnations of who you're speaking to. There's something on your heart
hmm.
that, and I think that's a really, you shouldn't discredit that as well, because like I say, you could have moved on and you could be doing all these other shows, but there's something in you that
Hmm.
and I think that's really something to be to honor as well in yourself.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes you don't see it straight away. You might not see it for a long time.
Mm.
And that's that thing that I said is on you from the start. When you can't quite, I bet you when you started your podcast, you didn't think you'd be, doing so many podcasts about the same show.
No.
But look at how many. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I'll be very, I'll be very frank with you. It's I'm a huge lover of Jodie Comer. I've given her a million and one shout outs on here, and I'll continue to do so. And
Yeah.
when I interview her, I'll tell her that. I'll be very candid. I was a big fan of hers, and I saw she was doing a play in London, and I just thought, oh wow! And I tried to get a ticket, and of course, it sold like absolute hotcakes. Getting a ticket for that thing was like gold dust.
Mm,
But they had the NT live screening, and I thought, okay, yeah, brilliant. Okay, I'll go local cinema, watch it. So, I had no idea that this show, I would be continuing the conversation about this show to where it is now, and yourself, been here been on here 3 times, it's just a bit like you in a way. Something happened in that cinema that night, and
mm,
and I think mainly because my love of this show not only is the subject matter and what the impact that it's having, but for me it was like the craft. It was what she was actually doing. Those
mm.
lines were all in her head. Like,
Yeah.
fine, yeah, you could do a 90-minute show, 90-minute monologue. Yeah, I can do it. And she did
Mm.
that 8 times a week, like yourself. And then, of course, you had the traveling and all that as well. But
Yeah.
for me, it was the craft of what she was doing and how they put that show together.
Mm.
And then suddenly this thing just appeared out of nowhere, and it sparked all these conversations. And you know, again, and of course, there's like reading your book as well made me realize that there's a parallels with the show. There's a Netflix show called Adolescence. I'm not sure if you watched Adolescence,
I
Stephen Ray.
haven't yet, but I know of it. Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'd recommend it. There's a lot of parallels with the things you talk about in here in your book.
Mm.
But there's which I'll talk about that in a second. But there was just something about that show which made me realize, okay. And I think maybe realize that how much in school we were programmed to think a certain way. So they're like, you've got to have a girlfriend, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And I think I can reveal something on here. Obviously, I won't name names, but Susie's other show, Inter Alia, because I know you've got a copy of that as well. Did you
Yeah.
like it?
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I loved
someone.
it.
I think I've said this on here as well, but it's like Prima Facie's mother in some ways. There's a
Mm.
lot of parallels between what Jodie and Rosamund Pike's characters and all that stuff. But yeah, I won't reveal that because I know it's in London right now, and I'm not going to spoil it. But there
Yeah.
was in Inter Alia, there's this sort of parallels with that. So hopefully this doesn't give anything away. But basically, in school one time, we heard a story that someone, and we were about 13, 14 at the time. So, and the age of consent over here in the UK is 16. We heard one night, and I think this did happen, that someone, they went to a party, and they all stayed up really late and all fell asleep. And in the morning, someone in our year raped one of the girls while she was asleep.
Mm.
And it got out in school. It spread like absolute wildfire, and I don't know if the police were involved. I don't know what happened, but all we know is that it just kind of went away after that, and no one ever spoke about it again. And then suddenly, with another conversation I've had on here with someone from the Inter Alia team, um, yeah, that, other big, Lucy and all that stuff. It just, just shows me like, oh, and suddenly like the body remembers these things. Like that memory stayed buried in me. I didn't think I'd, well, not as I wasn't pushing it down or anything because it wasn't my story, but there was just something about, and suddenly I watched Prima Facie, Inter Alia, and that story just appeared in my brain, and it was like, oh, yeah, this
See,
is,
there's something in you that, I listen to you and I know you're an actor as well,
yeah,
and that, we can do what we do because we have empathetic hearts. We're able to, and unbeknownst to you, probably at the time, you took that story in a very visceral way, and probably your imagination probably ran with it, with all the things you weren't told and
100%.
what happened and all that thing. Your psyche probably created this whole world around that. And then, like you say, life goes on, so you have to sort of put it somewhere.
Yeah,
And then these things just sort of tap it a little bit. Uh, and I think there's real beauty in, not, it's obviously a heavy thing. There's beauty in terms of the calling of why you want to be doing what you're doing. I think there's real beauty in that, and
yeah,
a testament to the empathy that you have to play characters and to play and to tell these stories. And
yeah.
I also honor you for being a man in this conversation. I tell every audience we need men in the conversation, and because it's so deemed a woman's issue, but it's not. It
No,
really is, and
yeah,
and that's why it's so rampant, because the world thinks, oh, it's a woman's issue. Again, they'll just get over it. They'll just continue to raise children. And because women are so resilient, but it's not a woman's issue. I don't know the statistics over there, but here it's 1 in 7 men are sexually assaulted,
hmm,
and that's only who report. And we know men are less likely to report than women. So the numbers, sexual assault in men here it's rampant as well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that comes with all its own stigma around, well, does that make me gay if I've been like, there's the poor, the things men have to go through.
hmm,
And then yeah, so that's a segue. But what I wanted to say was, I do think from hearing your story, I do think that, this has all been put on your heart for a reason, and I'm really excited to see where it leads you as well,
mm.
as a person, as a performer, as an interviewer, and you know, it'll be
Uh,
interesting to
well, thank you,
see,
man. Yeah,
because it does and then the longer you live with it, as I'm sure you have, from you've been doing these interviews for years now with on the show as well,
yeah,
but the
5 years
longer
now.
you
Yeah,
live with it, yeah, the longer you live with it, the more of those little moments, like you said, I remember that story from high school. The more I live with it, the more things are coming out from my own life as well. Oh yeah,
yeah,
like something last night I remember. Yeah, I remember some guy. It was, some guy saying something, and I was like, wow, I hadn't thought about that since it happened.
yeah,
But because you're living in it, you go, oh yeah, these days that would have constituted a sexual harm. Wasn't penetrative, wasn't that? But these days, harassment or, anything, it is. And I'm like, oh wow. And I remember at the time going, oh, that was a bit weird. Oh well, you know.
yeah,
But then it's still there. It's a lot. It's and like I said, that we've got a little person in us who would have noticed all those. I don't know if you saw recently. There was a great. It was on social media, but there was a clip. It was something to do with the Epstein files, but it was an old image or video, and of people lining up for like a portrait, and the little girl, she would have only been about 8 or 9, but the man just put her arm around her and touched her, and her whole body, they zoomed in on her, and her whole body just like, you
mm.
saw her
Like
just
slot, like
you
froze.
saw
Just
her discomfort, which was so instinctual. She wasn't thinking, oh, that guy's creep. She it was an example of how the body knows, and we know when something is not safe. And it was so subtle,
hmm,
but her reaction was very real if you really looked for it. But how often do we override that because we be nice, or we tell our children to, like, no, give your
mm,
granddad a kiss goodbye. I don't want to.
mm.
No, come on. the things that we are just conditioned to do, say,
Yeah.
tolerate, it all, I think, constitutes like, and I'm sure I've said this before, but I think as women, we don't have an embodied no in us or an embodied fuck you in us. So when these things happen, of course we freeze because we're not practiced in like the embodiment of going no or whatever it might be. We're not practiced in it, and it does us harm,
Yeah.
puts us in harm's way.
Yeah,
Mm.
no, no, it's brilliant, and thank you very much for those words. It means a lot. Thank you very much.
No,
Um,
I do. I'm excited. Yeah, I think, I'm
yeah,
excited to see where this path takes you because
yeah.
like I said to you before, it could have been anything. Could have been any subject that has really stayed with you, but it's interesting that this one has.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I've talked about other shows on here as well. A Little Life,
Mm,
which really stuck with me as well. I'd love to interview people behind Baby Reindeer and all that, and adolescence and all
mm,
that stuff. But it's just
yeah.
something about Prima Facie, which I think, like you say, like I'm reading again. I have read your book. You don't need to keep telling people you've read the book, Gal. But having read the book, and it's reminded me of like that programming sense. When we were in school, sometimes we would, and I think I was thinking about this before. I think my generation was. What was I saying the other day? Yeah. So yeah, my generation was, I think, the last one. My adolescence was like the last one before social media, but
Hmm.
the last, and also the last one before mental health and talking about all this stuff and experiences finally came into play. And I think
Mm.
for me, when I noticed a shift was when Robin Williams died in 2014. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, oh, he's died. What from? They said it was suicide. And I said, what? And he said, yeah,
Mm.
he battled severe depression and all that kind of thing for a long time. And I thought, hang on, that doesn't make. I remember thinking at the time, that doesn't make sense.
Mm.
He's happy. He was happy. He was
Mm.
smiling. He was joking. He was cracking them all the time. All these jokes, and he was constantly making people happy and constantly laughing. So therefore, he must have been so happy within himself. And of course, as life has gone on and experiences have shown me, that's not always true. And and I
No.
just remember thinking at the time, and that's when I started to notice more conversations about that area starting to come out, but I remember that, yeah, our adolescence, we didn't have social media, there were no phones, there was no access to, the shit that kids can access now. You know, our summer holidays were, should we go and should we go and meet in a coffee shop? And I'd be like, oh yeah, sure. We sit down, and then suddenly the phones come out, and then 50 minutes later, oh yeah, sorry, how have you been? It wasn't any of that. We'd go out, we'd get our bikes, we'd go to the local park, and we would go on the climbing frames or the slides, everything, or we just sit in a park and chat about
Mm.
stuff. And to be honest with you, a part of me really misses those days because
No. How lucky are we that we had that childhood?
yeah, and I feel very blessed to have had the last little snippet of it, those last sort of maybe
Yeah.
10 years or something before social media came in and shook it all up. But
Yeah. And it's got its place. It's got its place, I think, in terms those of those be having access to things that maybe aren't like maybe those who are experiencing harm or there is access to community around that. So I think it's got its place. It's just as many things do, but it's just the addiction. It's the addiction and how it robs the connection between people
Mhm.
and yeah. I mean, it's interesting you talk about mental health because one of the and a lot of the Q&As I did, we had sexual harm organizations and police and
Mhm.
lawyers. I had a police detective on one of the Q&As, and I'm not sure if it's the same over there, but he
Mhm.
spoke about sexual harm and he said, there was a time when drink driving wasn't talked about. And then
Mhm.
the death rates were horrific and everyone did it. You just drove home from the pub drunk. It was just
Yeah.
a thing. But then, the government got it. We did this huge campaign. We did all this campaigning, and we brought it out of the shadows, and we had these rules put around it. You weren't allowed to drive drunk, and all this stuff. And yes, it still exists, but the rates have gone down so much. And his hope and mine are that we can do the same with sexual harm. And
Hmm.
mental health is, that's starting to have the same trajectory. So is domestic violence. Like, it's a lot more spoken about. But sexual harm seems, I don't know if it's the same here, there, but it seems here to be the last sort of taboo subject that we're just brushing under the carpet. Um, and so, yeah, I would love to see more of it just really exposed, and I think because it's deemed a woman's issue, and because it's deemed a sex issue, there's all this shame around it. But
Mm.
that's where we all get to look at ourselves and go, well, why am I a bit uncomfortable talking about this? It's a natural thing. I should feel okay about having these conversations, and that's why in the book I talk about embodiment and actually going, well, we actually need to reclaim our relationship with our own sexuality and our own pleasure and our own aliveness as a source of sort of like prevention, and going, well, if I'm, yeah, I do, it's a slither of many things that need to change, but I think that's something we all have the power to look at,
Mm.
and to be having conversations with our kids around healthy sexuality, and
Mhm.
not shaming them for it, but just educating our boys around that women are not made for their pleasure.
Mm.
They are whole beings on their own, um, and yeah, there's just so much to deconstruct, but yeah,
Yeah. No, it's
and
it's
we
true.
each know how to.
Yeah,
Mm.
there's a phrase that went through my head for a number of years, and I was a bit. I think I have shared this on a previous episode with the Italian counterpart of Prima Facie, Melissa Vittori. Um, she's done what you've done, just around Italy and all that
Oh,
stuff.
wow,
And
yeah.
yeah, she was amazing to talk to. Revealed so much about Tessa, which I never thought about before. And she talked about
Wow.
the contradiction in her, which we'll talk about later. Which there's a passage in here as well, which I want to get onto.
Mm.
But there was a phrase which kind of went through my head for a number of years, and I was just a bit worried about sharing it. But then our conversation allowed me to just throw it out there. And I've always thought for years that, you know, and the phrase is simply this: I don't see women as disposable pleasures.
Hmm.
I don't, because they're not.
No.
They're human beings,
Mm.
and sadly, I think, and just going back to like school things for a second, which is we had this programming, I think, in us for such a long time of like the second you turn 16, and I remember this, and now I know it's a load of bollocks, but it's like the second you turn 16, you've got to lose your virginity. You've
Mm.
got to lose it. It's like you're seven,
Mm.
and then some. If you haven't done it by 17 or 18, you're considered a loser, or you're considered like, oh my
Yep.
God, just.
Yeah.
And then people look at you going, what's wrong with you? And it's like, well,
Mm.
I don't know, it just hasn't happened yet. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
and then people
That's so.
go,
Yeah.
and that's more than okay. Take your time.
Yeah.
But people look at you, and of course, when you're that age as well. And I think one thing I've learned about myself is that how much I allowed peer pressure to kind of get to me at the
Yeah.
time. And I remember
Mm.
think, and then these weird thoughts just go through my head, which was, oh my God, am I unlovable? Am I in this? Am I in this, that, and the other? And then, of course,
Mm.
again, not true, not true.
Yeah.
But
No.
it was like this feeling of like, oh God. But then it was like a real wake up call. And again, reading your stuff as well, which was that was never it was all based in lies and based in their ego and this perceptual programming which society has in some way or another, that if you tick all of these boxes, like you go to school, you go to university, you lose your virginity at 16, you get a job in a stable house by the age of 30, you've got kids at 40, all this fucking shit, then
Yeah.
therefore you are an acceptable human being. You've passed the test. Well done. And it's like, who snuck that into the mix, huh?
I know. Who created that?
Yeah.
I, 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 you know, but these are the conversations we need to be having, and I would love to see you in schools literally sharing that story.
Mm,
Because how many boys would sit there going, "Oh, oh, okay, you know,
yeah.
okay, I'm not weird, I'm not behind, I'm just not like normalizing these conversations, I think is so important because
Mm,
we've got to outweigh the stuff coming in at them, you know? Because when the stuff coming in at them is you've got to lose your virginity at 16 and you've got to do this, this, and this, you know, we have to work so much harder at counteracting that noise. And whether it's our children, whether it's people who you connect with in whatever way you can,
mm,
um, because we need those stories. We need to be hearing those things. Young people need to be hearing that, you know.
mm. Oh, yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm just telling the truth. So,
But it's your vulnerability, and your truth and your vulnerability is, and that's why storytelling is so powerful. Whether it's one-on-one like this, or whether it's a play like Prima Facie, it's like it's when we tell our stories, and that's what is so big in the book. Is the power of telling our stories and of storytelling.
yeah.
So of the work we do as actors and just as humans telling our stories. And I saw that firsthand through performing the show, but also people telling me their stories. It was like it was on the same level to me as what I had just done on stage, and someone literally giving me a hug, and within 30 seconds, hugging me in my ear, literally telling me their whole rape history. And then the weight, and then physically feeling the weight soften
Wow.
because someone just held them for a moment. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet at all, but I think that is
No.
another element of how I have done this show that I think is very different to everybody else around the world because I have, and maybe again that's why the text is a bit is a lot, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't have it any other way. But because I was taking it to big and small towns, you can't, there's no security rushing me past people to avoid them. I had to go out and they were so moved and told me their stories. And so to give them a hug, to physically feel their bodies release, because again, they saw their story shared, they saw it like a permission slip to go, oh, I'm not alone. And then to be able to hold a little bit of space where many would share their stories for the first time.
Mm.
I have held 99-year-old women in my arms who went,
99.
oh, old, yep, the older generations who just collapse in your arms and go, oh, I always thought it was my fault. And you just feel their frail little bodies and you can't do anything but hold them.
Yeah.
Or teenagers who just like, you just want to, oh, like take home and protect. But they would share their stories and literally, and that's what really gets me, again, the power of storytelling. But it's so important to be telling our stories and sharing our vulnerability because if that story you just told me helps one boy not feel pressured to
Yeah.
maybe
Go.
rape someone because he feels so pressured to lose his virginity, then wow, like,
Yeah.
you just don't know whether someone hearing that might go, oh, cool. So I don't have to buy into all that.
No.
It'll all happen when it needs to. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And
um,
yeah.
and that's the power of what we do. There's power of storytelling, and yeah. But
Yeah.
we all have that power. You
Indeed.
don't have to be an actor to have that story. You can have these conversations in everyday life. Someone holding space. Again, I talk about it in the book, holding space for people when they tell their stories. That's all they want. They don't want to they don't want you to fix it. They don't want you to go, well, right, let's go to the police, let's go do this, let's go do that. They just need the space held for them and
Hmm.
to know that it will be held with belief and care and because as we all know, when we share our stories, we a little it starts to soften. When we share our vulnerability, it's not so heavy.
Mm.
And
Not at all.
I have felt that a billion times in my life when things are bubbling up and I share it with someone and I go, oh, it doesn't feel as heavy anymore. We all have the power to do that for other people and to be that for other people. And I think
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. And I think,
yeah.
yeah, just I remember that, just that story I mentioned about that guy in school. I think I don't know what his motivations were that night. I don't want to know, to be honest. But I feel like that was probably part of it. I've got to
Of
lose it.
course, peer
I've got to.
pressure. Yeah.
I've got to lose it. I've got to lose it. And it's like,
Yeah.
why? Because then other people, and I think at the cause of it, it's like, so other people won't judge me. It's like, who's judging you?
Mm.
Nobody.
But,
Yeah.
but you mentioned inter alia before, and again, without giving it away, there's that comes into the conversation, like peer
Oh yeah.
pressure.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
It's brilliant.
um,
It's brilliant. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's very well done. How, yeah,
Yeah.
I won't talk about it, otherwise I'll give it away. But
I know,
yeah,
I
I
know.
think
I want to talk
um,
about it as well, but I'm like, ah.
yeah. But I think yeah, it is. It's knowing that we've got to be the louder voices. You know.
Yeah, it's and well, there's a story just yeah, you mentioned there about being a storyteller. You don't have to be an actor as such. And I remember one time we had this well, we had some work done on the house. I think just before the pandemic, and I know there was a guy there. I can't remember his name. So his name was Phil or something like that. And he was there for the first like week and a bit, and then he disappeared. And he was one of like the project managers or something, and quite one of the guys involved in the main of it. And then so we're like, where's Phil gone? And then it turns out he had some health trouble and he had to go into hospital for a long time. I think he had cancer or something, but he thankfully beat it. And as far as I know, he's alive and still doing very well right now. But he came round after the work was all done just to basically check on the place and see how we were doing, all that stuff. And we basically just, so I said to him like, how are you? How's it been? And he just, and he's not an actor at all. He worked on building sites his whole life. He's got the kind of like Cockney sort of geezer sort of sound, London, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You don't talk about emotions in here. You just get the job done. Do you know what I mean? That's that sort of mentality.
Yeah.
And he was of that generation where if you talked about emotions, you were just like, oh my God. It's like, just
Yeah.
pull yourself together. And it's like, oh, that toxic thing.
Mm.
And then you realize just how much shite our parents and their parents' generations and their parents before them, how much shite they've been drip fed
Mm.
into their ears,
Yeah.
about this sort of thing. But anyway, so I think we just asked him like, so how's it been this past year and a bit? And he goes, and he just told me this story, and he's not an actor, but the way that he was telling me his story about just, yeah, mate, you just gotta, I was given this, I was given that, I was told it might not be good, it might not be this, that, and the other, but I'm still here, and it just showed me that if you just keep going in life and just keep having a positive outlook on stuff, I'm heavily paraphrasing now, but if you just keep doing all this stuff, then, just live your life, it just showed me you got to just keep going and, never take anything for granted. And I'm just there, just watching this guy, and just my jaw is on the floor. He's been through
Mm.
one of the most, sadly, some people do go through this, and my heart goes out to him. But
Mm.
the biggest crisis in his life regarding his health, and I was just enthralled, and he was just telling it so openly and so candidly. And I was just, and he left, and he was like, right, I've got to go. But anyway, look, so lovely to see you. We'll see you later. And then he went out, got in his van, and drove off. And I remember just looking at my mum going, bloody hell. And I remember she looked at me and went, yeah, now that's a
Mm.
real hero.
Yeah.
That's a real hero. And I thought, yeah, yeah, obviously you see
And that,
this. Yeah, sorry, go on.
no, 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 I was just going to say, and that authenticity is what we strive for as actors telling stories. Like you want to be able to tell it as beautifully as that, as you know, um, yeah, um, where it is just your story, and it transforms the listener because it was told with so much vulnerability and authenticity. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm just striving for more and more in my work, is going, wow, how can this just be alive in me? And even with Prima Facie, I think it was a real beautiful gift in that sense, in that so many things you can worry about as a performer fell away because when the story is so alive in you, none of that matters.
Hmm.
Yes, yes, your voice matters. Yes, your projection, all those things matter. But when you're so living it, it is so there, and it. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like it's like sometimes you go, oh, am I doing too much with my hands, or am I doing like, am I, you can get in your head about something.
Mm,
But when I did this play, it was, it's so alive that your body
mm,
just reacts in its own way, whether you couldn't plan that really. Obviously, the play's blocked and all that stuff. But in terms of when it's so alive in your body will do what it needs to do, and your
mm,
voice will carry the way it needs to carry because it's so alive. And that doesn't dismiss craft and all that at all. But there's something really beautiful about a story just being so alive in you and coming out so authentically, like this guy just told you a story.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and I
It,
love seeing that there's a real movement towards that type of storytelling now too. I don't know if you've been I've been noticing it just
oh
a
yeah,
lot,
yeah,
a lot more stillness, a lot just vulnerability and authenticity, and it's
yeah.
like,
It's
so
funny because yeah, yeah, I'm sorry, but there was a time when I first went to Guildford, where we first ever screen lesson. I remember the guy who did the classes. I can't remember his name, but he was said, okay, like all of you, I just want to see what you're like on camera to begin with, and then you get in front of the camera, and they said, okay, what's your name? It was Callum or something like that, and he'd be like, okay, just tell me something about yourself, and then like basically getting us to feel at ease in front of the camera and all that kind of thing. And I'd mentioned that I'd loved Shakespeare and all that stuff, so I went up and did it. And then he was like, "Okay, tell me about Shakespeare, Ollie." And I just talked about Shakespeare, how it belongs to us, blah 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 blah. And then I remember him saying to go, "Okay, so what do you guys get from that?" And then they were like, "Oh, you seem like a trustworthy person, blah blah blah." But and then he said, "Oh, there's a degree of vulnerability here." And I remember my first reaction at the time was, "Oh, shit, is that a bad thing?" And I was like,
mm,
is that a character flaw or something? And then actually it's like, no, 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 not at all, and, I felt, the thing is, I've never considered myself to be vulnerable in any way. I've simply just thought, I'm just being me. I'm just telling the truth. I'm just telling my story, and, the word
but that's hard.
vulnerability, I don't
It's
feel
hard for a
vulnerable
lot
at
of
all.
people. But that's hard for a lot of people. A lot of people find it really hard to
Yeah,
speak,
yeah,
because we've been so trained to push it down.
yeah, 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 it's
Yeah.
interesting. I know, it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. There's a show called Adolescence. I'd recommend it as well. It's
Yes, I know all about it. My daughter's watched it. I do need to watch it. I've heard many things, so yeah,
yeah,
I do need to watch it.
but it ties into what we're doing, and something you said earlier about we look at these guys and we think they couldn't do that. No, 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 they couldn't do that. Like, yeah, there's a look to crime. Crime has a look.
Oh,
Do you
not
know
at
what I mean?
all. Not at
Like
all. I mean,
bollocks. You know.
I mean, I don't love it. You see so much now as people um, sharing how most perpetrators are white.
It's true. It's
And we're
true.
just so like, why are we shocked by that? Because we've been conditioned to believe otherwise.
Yeah,
Most convicted, rapists are white. Like, wow.
yeah, yeah. Again, the guy in school was a white middle class boy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
and like Julian in the UK version or Damien in your version.
Yep.
But yeah, I remember. So I don't think this isn't a spoiler, actually. I don't think so. The first episode, you realize that this kid, 13 years old, is arrested from suspicion of murder, and
Mm.
uh, and it opened the rest of the series just opens up a whole thing. Episode three in particular, I won't say too much, but it's a back and forth between the child, who was played absolutely superbly. I mean, what a huge role to have at such a young age, and the way he just blew it out the park. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe, when you watch a performance and you don't think, oh, that actor's doing a great job, you go, that is the character. That's
Yeah, he was in what was he in just recently? He was in Wuthering Heights, wasn't he? He played the youngest.
I think so. I haven't seen it. So
He
yeah,
was incredible in that too. I saw him in, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, apparently in that, and just again, just yeah, beautiful.
yeah.
Mm.
But it opens up a whole thing about adolescence these days, and generational trauma being passed down, and all the. But I think one thing that one has is that it brought social media into the conversation. So,
Mm.
and there's certain interrogation scenes where they go, okay, well, we noticed via your Instagram that you posted a picture of this person, and if you look under here, there's some comments here which are pretty pretty aggressive. What's your relationship like? How do you feel about women, Jamie? And and I remember watching it for the first time, going, "What? This is a 13-year-old kid." Yeah, we're like, "Whoa, this is a bit much." But that is what's happening now. Now,
and and much younger.
Yep. It,
I had,
there's a,
yeah.
sorry. There's a quote in your book. I remember you saying there's kids as young as 8 being treated for wounds because of something they've watched
At
online.
least 8. Yeah, at least 8. So yeah, psychologists would share with me after shows. Yeah, because they're seeing, and and these are wounds like, to be graphic, anal tears and
Mm,
uh, you know,
yeah.
they've been, they're choking girls because that's what they're seeing on, and I think it's we are in denial if we think that if you've got access to a phone in your pocket, like most kids do, that they are not accessing porn, and porn isn't what it used to be. It's not a dirty magazine under your bed anymore.
Hmm.
It is graphic. Most of it is assault.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what it's teaching, and particularly, you can imagine an 8-year-old has got no comprehension of how to, other than just like, oh, cool, that's what you do. They just see what they can do, and then they do it. Um, it's wild, and the highest, I've, but again, working along all these organizations, you just learn so much. Like the highest use of Pornhub is between 3 and 5 p.m. So after school, before mum gets home, you know, that's the highest time that it's used. And yeah, it's
Mm.
again, we can just pretend it all doesn't exist, but that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah,
Um,
and I know over here they've got the new act they introduced along. Was it last year? It was last year. Online Protection Act, where you had to prove that you're over 18 to
oh
access
yeah,
sites. How many people have probably forged that
oh yeah,
and
yeah,
given fake email addresses, given fake
yeah,
IDs, or just
yeah.
saying, "Oh yeah, I'm over 18," and just put in like their uncle's or best friend's older
Oh,
brother's birthday date instead, and just
yeah.
uploading a selfie to prove your, oh God, all that text.
I know, and that's where it comes down to thinking, well, yes, we can wait till they all change the law on it, but do
Mm,
we want our children to be the guinea pigs of that and go, oh, okay, well, it's their fault. They need to make it a law. Or you go,
mm,
well, you control your child using your phone in your home, an
yeah.
8-year-old. That's, But in saying that, you can do your bit, and then they're going to school with kids who have access to it. So I think it's about having the awkward conversations and being the one they come to for this stuff. So that if those things, and we know from, again, sexual harm organizations who are doing educational work, and that we know from that they're doing work in like preschools, teaching young kids about body autonomy at an age appropriate way, and it's labeling your body parts correctly, and it's talking about healthy touch, and it's not to overwhelm them, and it's the parents, actually, it's the adults getting in the way of this education because they're like, oh, it's too, like, we don't want to be, they're too young for that,
Mhm.
like, and it's like, it's age appropriate, we're just teaching them, and what the research has shown is those, so much has been reported from those kids having that education,
Mhm.
from going, oh yeah, that man tried to touch me that way. So if they weren't aware of this, they go years and years and years, and then it comes up later, like you say, in like repressed trauma. So it's coming out if it's happening sooner, so they can recognize it, or they're able to see. Because if we don't know, we don't know. If we're not taught, like I wasn't taught as a young child, I wasn't taught about healthy touch, unhealthy. None of those conversations were had with me.
And mine neither.
And
Mine neither.
no,
Yeah.
and I think back, and I think how much I could have voiced more if I had known, like because I just didn't have the language for it. I just internalized it as like, oh, that guy was weird, or that felt weird, or that was,
Yeah.
and because no one had had those conversations with me, I didn't have an open dialogue with someone to share those things with as well. So you just swallow it all or freeze, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I think the misconception is that it has to be perfect, and it just doesn't. It's like it can be awkward. My 16-year-old knows that I didn't grow up with these conversations, so she knows that the language can come out, fumbly and messy, but she also knows she can come to me about it and we'll figure it out. And yeah, and is it awkward? Do I want to be having it sometimes? No.
No, no, it's awkward.
Oh my God, I know, I don't want to know about all this stuff,
Yeah.
but then I remind myself, no, you do, because you want to be the one that is that she's sharing this stuff with,
Yeah.
so you can navigate it, and like
Yeah.
you said, so you can be that voice that goes, no, you don't have to lose your virginity at 16. You don't have to do this, and we need
Yeah.
more people we can speak to about this. Otherwise, peer
Yeah.
pressure just wins, and
Yeah.
and it's costing lives. It's taking people's lives who feel like they're not adequate or they're not worthy. Like you said, you felt unworthy or unlovable. It's like that's not
Nah, it's not true.
at all.
No.
It's not, no.
Yeah.
We
And it's
just
like,
need more voices of that.
yeah. And imagine if you meet someone who I remember. I remember at uni one time there was a bit of banter between a couple of people one night at a party, and I think one of them didn't take it too well or something, and his response was, and this is verbatim, he goes, "Well, at least I have more sex than you." You're like, oh, for God's sake.
But imagine if you could go back as your adult self to that younger self and know how to handle that, just with like, wow. But
Yeah. It's like,
yeah, it
wow,
brings
really? Really?
wow. What does
Yeah.
that mean?
And yeah, like, well done. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah, it's huge.
well, if someone goes, yeah, I've had so many relationships, I've been with so many women, it's like,
And I think
right,
that's,
right,
I think
okay.
that's, and I think that's the obsession with reality shows like Married at First Sight and
Yeah,
Love at
yeah,
Blind,
yeah.
all those things. I think that's why we're drawn to it, because we're like, people watch those things wanting to see themselves and go, is it? It's that younger world on a screen going, are we? Oh, am I? Is this normal behavior? Is it not? We're all just figuring it out. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And I tell you what, one thing that stuck with me was you talked in a lot of detail again about the first response, that the first
Yeah.
response that you have to people. And again, going back to the stage door at Prima Facie, when you're meeting these people, you've got a 99-year-old woman in your arms, a lifetime's worth of
Yes.
stuff.
A lifetime worth of armor too, has held it in.
I mean,
I've had I've had many psychologists share with me that the older generation are often the hardest to treat.
oh, 100%, 100%.
Not because they don't want to heal, but because they've built so many walls and so much armor around their pain that
Yeah.
just
And
really, and so many stories around it, so much. Well, they've really carried the shame, and that is quite hard for a lot of people to start to unpack. Mm.
he said that, yeah, and of course the first response is just it's key. It's
It can
so
make or break.
key.
It's the make or break many times of people's
Mm,
healing,
yeah,
whether they're believed, how
yeah.
they're
And it
responded
just
to. And again, that's where we all have power.
mm,
Yes, the law needs to change. Yes, 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 all these things. Yes, it's a yes, and how am I perpetuating harm by believing rape myths? How am I doing that by when the boys are joking, do I go, oh yeah, 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 and we just blow it, or do we call it out? Which I must say, takes a lot of courage. You can be outed for, and that's sadly what's happening with young people, is they are calling stuff out and then they get excluded from their peer circles and the bully
Yeah.
being the one that speaks out. So I get how hard it is. Or, you get men being aggressive because you're like, oh, whatever. But that, yeah, it's where we all hold power. And I think one of the biggest with 1 in 3 women being sexually assaulted, and that's only who are only reported. So we know the numbers are higher than that. I think I write this in the book too. While I was writing, I would look around and I would see anyone I spoke to had a story about sexual harm.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
I could probably count on one hand those who came to me and said, I've been really lucky, it hasn't affected me personally. On one hand. Everyone else had a story of something.
Jeez.
Some weird uncle, whatever it is. Whatever it was, someone had it. Everyone has a story around this.
Yeah.
Harassment. So, therefore, we all hold, it's having that ability to respond. And as again in the book, it's talking about our response is someone's, and most people will likely tell a friend before they tell the police, before they tell, young people, they tell you are the ones your friend will tell more likely than their parents. So you all have a responsibility of care of how you handle that, and believing them, because I think, and again, we're not practiced in our responses to this. Employees, if you go and go, my colleague, he did something inappropriate, our reaction is to kind of go, are you sure? Oh, he's such a nice guy. We sort of, we freeze in our response as well, because again, we're not practiced in like actually just hearing people tell us these things. And it's not about having the perfect thing to say, but it's just going, holding space and letting them share it, and knowing that them sharing it is the first step to it coming out of their body and dissipating a little bit. And the amount of survivors who have shared, the more they got to tell it, the easier it was to carry. You would have read the survivor story who shared her husband. She remarried, and she was able to share with her husband just over and over and over again. And that helped, because she just, and I know myself, when, if I'm anxious about something, the more I can talk about it, the better it feels. And yes, we all have our own private journeys with things as well, but just supporting survivors, believing them, knowing, busting rape myths and breaking down the stigma that false reports are very, very rare. They are very rare, and yes, they exist, but they are very rare. And and I think what I feel really what gets me the most probably is young people sharing their stories and not being believed by their parents. I've seen firsthand the damage that does. A daughter telling her mum that her stepdad did this or her father did this and not being believed.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. There's I think I sent you this. I've had somebody on here called Annalie Howling, and she's written a book called Unapologetic, and she talks about how it's a really, I can't recommend the book enough. It's absolutely stunning. It's basically about, in her words, like the unshackling from shame, and you find your unapologetic self at the bottom. So you go to everything that you've been holding on to, you get it out of your system, and then your true unapologetic self is born for the first time. And
I love that.
yeah, it's a big thing for both men and women, I think. But
Yes.
she talk, I mean, for all of us, but she talks in a lot of detail about her own. She's so open and so vulnerable in this book. And I remember us talking on her episode that we did, a little while ago now. Uh, she says, and I quote, "It's really, really fucking honest. It's really fucking honest." And yeah, and it's like, yeah, that's true, and that's what you want, you know. And I think we've talked about it across our episodes and today. You know, you can't help somebody if you can't be open about your own experiences yourself. You know, because then it shows you're not alone. And of course, you can't help someone who can't help themselves. You know, and I think it's definitely for people who want to know more about shame and know that there is a cure more than anything. And
Yeah,
yeah, but it
yeah,
starts with you. Yeah.
it totally does. And we met a wonderful man on this tour who, he was working at one of the theaters, and we walked in, and he, had his guard up, and a bit grumpy, and I was like, okay,
Here we
here we
go.
go. And but then, we were packing in and we were rigging lights, and then he suddenly sort of it dawned on him what the show was about. I think he sort of maybe read the synopsis, and he came up to me, and I was laying down carpet tiles, and he goes, I just want to share that yeah, I'm a survivor myself. And I said, wow. And
Wow.
then we got he then we had a conversation for 2 hours where he just shared it all, and he said, and I just saw all his walls come down, and the things he said, like, the he's dealt with it through creating, like, being able to make jokes about something so heavy. Like he said, if I share with you, it's he said, uh, oh, what did he say? I give a good blowjob because my granddad taught me, and
Yeah.
I was just shocked. But also he
Jeez.
but but he was full of these jokes because that was his way. He goes, I own it now. And he goes, I
Mm.
know I scare the shit out of people. I know I scare people out of the room. I know I'm a lot, but it's my way of coping and making people go, this 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 exists, and you're not alone, and I can, and his way is to, use his dark humor, but also he said, I have days where I have to just sit in the pain, and I sit in it, and I allow it, and I allow it all to come out. And he's, become an amazing advocate for survivors himself. He runs men's groups. He's like a suicide support person. Like, that's the person they call. So he's turned, again in the book, but he's turned his pain into purpose of being of service to others.
Mhm.
And but what, you could forgive him for the things he was saying, because you could see firsthand that this is a man he's gone into his trauma, and he's finding a way to live with it. He's unapologetic about how he looks to everybody else, because he's like,
Mhm.
this is how I survive. If it's too much for you, then that's fine, but this is how I survive. And I honestly just had nothing but respect for him.
Oh,
I
totally.
came in going, oh, okay, you're a grumpy guy that's just going to be on,
You're like, yeah, okay, here we go.
give me a day. And by the end of it, we were just like best mates, because I thought, wow,
Yeah.
your vulnerability, and you could forgive his inappropriateness, or you could forgive his dark humor, because you realize this is someone that's good. He's been through the darkest thing, and
Mm.
it's his way through it. And I just have nothing but respect for people that that whatever works for them, and he spoke very openly about, having a daughter of his own, and having to face the fear of potentially being the monster living within him. And he was very open about it, and how what he's done to not perpetuate the harm that was done to him, because we know a lot of perpetrators were victims themselves. So again, just
Mhm.
nothing but respect for someone who's gone, this is the harder path, to really look at yourself and go, this monster, you know, generation, it lives in me, and if I don't do everything I can to work on myself, that'll be the outcome here too. So
Mm.
yeah, again, it's what you said, people being unapologetically themselves, and
Yes.
and being, again, we all have power to accept people for that. versus make people fitting into boxes and make people feel they've got to be a certain way, and it's just not,
Mm.
it's, all it does is shuts people out and makes people feel alone, and
Mm.
and the reality is they're not. No one goes through this life unscathed. We're all going to have our thing,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Mm.
you know, and
Yeah,
when we
no.
do, when we do, we remember the ones who, who were vulnerable enough to be there and hold that space. And
Yeah,
it's a real gift to get, real gift to hold space for people in their darkest moments,
mm.
and having
Yeah.
the empathy to know that we will need it as well one day.
Oh yeah, and one thing I've learned is that I'm a big believer in karma, and
Hmm.
if you get back what you put out,
Yeah,
you be a dick, you're gonna get people being a dick back to you. You be a
yeah,
great person, whilst knowing your worth and not letting your good nature be taken advantage of in any way,
yeah,
then good things will come back to you. It's how it
yeah,
works. What goes around comes around, etc.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I remember, yeah, I've mentioned this on here before, but I think, I think I'll repeat it just for I think the nature of this. But in Georgia Bird's second episode, we talked about how I remember one night I was getting off the train and there was a girl sat on the wall. I was just outside. I had my phone. I was just trying to get an Uber. We'd had a few drinks and all that kind of thing. And there was a girl sat on the wall just over there, and she was absolutely crying her eyes out, and I just like trying to, the kind of crying where it's coming, like the tears are coming, but you're doing everything you can to just trying to like not like go "Rah," or any kind of way. But and I just thought an instinct just kicked in, and I thought, wow, there's someone who's clearly had a rough night, and I just thought I just
yeah.
went over to her and I said, "Sorry, darling, are you okay?" And she was like, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, I've just found out my boyfriend's been cheating on me for a long time." And I was like, and it's just like, and in that moment, you're like, just brain, give me something, anything. And then
Yeah.
I just sat next to her and I just thought, yeah, if I was in this situation, like say if my girlfriend's been cheating on me or something like that, and I'd found out, and well, what's a nice way to find out your partner's been cheating on you? There isn't. And and I said, well, I said to her, well, don't worry about it. You're a beautiful girl. He doesn't deserve you, and I just know that it's all going to be all right, and you're going to be okay, and you'll find
Mm,
happiness. And all that kind of thing. I
mm,
just did what I could. In that moment. And she gave me a hug, and we got each other on Facebook and all that kind of thing. That was back in the day where Facebook was kind of a thing. It's kind of petered off a bit now.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, no, I remember. No, I won't say her name. I'll respect her privacy. And then I saw her get in her cab and drive home and stuff. And then I just got my Uber and went home. And I just and the weird thing is, I never thought more about it after that
yeah,
until early this year. And then suddenly it just popped into my head, and I just thought, oh yeah, yeah, I remember that. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, again, you don't know what, sometimes it's just being with people in their vulnerability and like I said, holding space for that.
Mm,
And you talk about coming out after the show and things like that. That's all it is. It's just being willing to go, wow, okay, whether it's a hug or whether it's whatever they need. And, I wish
yeah.
I had more time with people to do that, because I think it's a very, after a show like this, it's very visceral and it's very alive in people. And I know that the show has been like an activator for them. And I've talked about this often, but my intention with the resources I had of doing everything on my own, I never ever sacrificed on having care for the audience, because I really felt that there was a responsibility in that with this show
Hmm.
to really hold people with care. Um, yeah, I won't go into detail about anything else, but I will say that I saw it missing some places, and
Hmm.
it bothered me, and so I really sought that within I swore to myself, in my version of this, people will be held, because I feel like there was this responsibility of care when you know you're delivering something that is triggering. Yeah, I just felt you owe it to people's hearts to have someone have people there to support that.
Hmm.
And admittedly, we never sort of needed it too much. And I often was that for a lot of people. It was
Hmm.
me, because I think there's something about when you're the person they respond to with, or you told my story, it's actually you they want to connect with.
Hmm.
And again, I found that a deep honor,
Oh, it's a huge honor. It's a huge honor.
yeah. So often that person was me, even though I had, psychologists and things on hand. It was obviously me that they needed that from, and
Hmm.
uh, but yeah, I felt really strongly about that, because as a producer, as a creative, you know what you're bringing, you know, and yes, you can have trigger warnings and all that, which you do,
Hmm.
um, and some could argue that well, TV shows and stuff, they just put the trigger warning. We don't have, but I just felt it was an act of care in a live room to be able to support people in that way.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to get one thing that again struck me was again just new discoveries about Tessa. Just coming back to the play, which was
Yep.
there was there's a word in it. Where's the phrase? I've written it down here. The world of attachment. There's a little chapter you talk about like the attachment that some people have when it comes to their relationships and stuff. But one thing that really stuck out with me, this is a new discovery about Tessa, was her worth is based on the law and the work that she does, and she sees her self-worth as working hard, getting the cases, not coming second, as she says, and really prioritizing that. And like her worth is based on doing great work rather than doing what the law tells her to do, rather than following her actual gut and soul instinct. And of course, there's that line where she says, where the dean says, "There is no legal truth. There is no real truth, only legal truth. Do not trust your gut instinct." And right from the off, she's been told to ignore her impulses and to just do things literally by the book. And if the book
Mm.
doesn't say that this subject matter should be brought to justice or anything like that, then it's not. And of
Mm.
course, in her case, it's sexual assault,
Yeah.
and there's no chapter in that book about this stuff, and
No, and what it highlighted really for me, and this was my way into her in a way that maybe audiences don't particularly pick up on, or some do, I don't know. But it definitely was and the longer I lived with the story, the more of those threads I saw. So I mention attachment in the book because we all form our attachment styles from how we were raised, literally from birth, whether we were um, you know, soothed when we cried, how our needs were met, literally as babies, create the imprint in us to how we respond in life,
mhm.
and how we attach, how we relate to others, how we form relationships. That's why you see so many sort of dysfunctional relationships, because it's sort of unmet attachment needs kind of clashing with each other in adult bodies, and we're two little kids going, I've got this need and you've got that need, and we're just we're missing each other. So
Yeah.
but in terms of Tessa, what I really looked at was, you mentioned her drive in the law, and her being quite indoctrinated by the power of the legal system, and being a lawyer, and her worth being determined by that. And what I mean by attachment is really going, where did that start? Where did that desire for her worth, and where did that all begin in her as a person?
Hmm.
And we know from the play that she came from a violent upbringing. She came from a lower class upbringing.
Yeah.
So,
The brother
you
gets
know,
into fights and all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so it's no coincidence that that was in the script. She
Mm.
was escaping. I mean, even her journey with law school, she was the one um, underestimated. She, uh, so she's. If you start to look into, and that's the work I did, was going, well, what was her life growing up. We know that something happened to her father. You can decide what that is from the script, whether there was anger in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we replicate our parents in a lot of ways. So Johnny, the brother,
Mm-hmm.
was very likely took after his father. So there's an anger, that aggression. She grew up around a lot of aggression and anger, for whatever reason that existed. She has a mum who, and a brother and a younger brother who like to sort of numb stuff out, smoking, playing video games. Like, what is that all? That's all just, I don't want to feel anything. So when you start looking at that, the environment that she grew up in, and then she did everything she could to escape that.
Mm-hmm.
So she went to, so it was her way out. Law school was her way out. So she had to, and then I think what happens with that is then you get a bit blinded by the Damiens and the Julians of the world, because you think, well, they're not like that. I know aggression. I know anger. This is not that. So you're blinded by, and she didn't see the red flags. I see them now as living in that story. You can, I don't know how many times you've read it or seen it, but you start to go, oh, he crossed the boundary a few times before that happened. And there's an interesting, I'm sure I've said it before, but there's an interesting part for me in it where that this story is very much about class as well. There's a real class system at play in this play, and it does not dawn on me that as soon as he found out she wasn't a private school girl, he raped her. Like the entitlement and the power over someone else that is very alive in power structures and class structures. We know that like private school boys have got different beliefs around, where other people have come from. And so when you start peeling all that back and you just start going, she wasn't, and this is what I talk about in the book, she wasn't raised with a sense of such like self-worth, and she grew up around anger, and like she grew up having to learn coping mechanisms for the world she lived in. So I don't believe she grew up learning, self-worth and how to protect herself and how to use her voice and how to use her instinct and all those things. So she became, I think, a bit blinded to those things. And it's not, again, as I say, nothing ever excuses harm. This is nothing to do with but I think nothing ever excuses it. But I think until we start looking at how we are valuing ourselves as women, how we are teaching men to value women, this harm continues, because we put ourselves unconsciously in harm's way. And that's a very, very touchy thing for people to hear or to even fathom. And I'm very conscious of it when I talk about it in Q&As, because I never ever want a survivor to feel like anything was ever their fault, because it never is. It's always the perpetrator is always to blame for harm. However, I think until we start looking at those things, we unconsciously put ourselves in harm's way. We seek relationships that potentially harm us, or we don't see the red flags
Big time.
because we're so hungry for this other thing over here that we don't see it coming. And those are the things I think people just want to stay in the dark about. And and I just think, well, what would the world look like if we actually, as women, were taught how valuable we are, how much our voice matters, how much our no matters, how much our yes matters, how much all those things. Like, if we were raised with more of a sense of wholeness and who we are within ourselves, would we be, so sadly nothing will ever make us immune to harm, but if it can reduce it a little bit,
Yeah.
and it's sometimes
Yeah.
it's a big thing. It's hard to know even where to start. But when we're raising women to think your voice doesn't matter and um, you won't be believed, like what are we teaching women if we're not empowering them? Um, because these things, all these things still exist around. Well, yeah, it's a heavy subject, and
Yeah.
that's what I mean by it is, and I saw it in Tessa's story, and I lived it, by living that story over and over again. It starts sort of leaping out of the page at you, and you just start going, oh my gosh. And when you're literally experiencing going through it every night, and then you just start to see again, like the other threads I was seeing, I saw the threads in it, and I was like, wow, she didn't. And I saw the red flags that of what Damien, how he was, and I was like, wow, there was, and he's got his own power dynamics at play. He comes from you think about his upbringing. His dad's the best KC, yet he's not. So you talk about he's having to live up to this,
Yeah.
you know, um, the status that his dad holds, but he's not quite meeting it. Tessa and Adam are the top barristers on their floor. He's not, so it's a
Yeah, that's true.
power to him. It's a power game. And so when you see there's all these other dynamic, it's not just black and white. It's so nuanced, and
Yeah.
those are the things we get to look at as humans and go, okay, where can I then um, not be responsible for how I am again either perpetuating harm or preventing it by how I'm helping, either building, helping other women, building them up, believing them. You know, I've said many times, one of my favorite lines in this show
Mm,
is, and I deliver it directly to the audience
mm.
because it's delivered twice, and it is um, in the second part with the lawyer comes in. We have a jury. How many women? 4. Is that good? Mum asks. I don't know. Men can be just as bad at believing other women. Why is that? And then I look directly at the audience. I say, why is that? And just there's a beat of a silence because I think, why are we so conditioned to not, as women, to not believe other women? And that is like it just roars through me in a moment, and it's one of my favorite lines of this play because I think and that's telling, when you have these really strong pulls of, there's many brilliant lines in this show, but that one particularly gets me because I think it's a seed of where we can begin to help each other.
Mm.
It's an opportunity we have, and we're not taking it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. And and one thing is just that energy and stuff, it's just very, what time is it? Okay, yeah, we've got a bit more time. But I jump very late in the evening there for you all. So, yeah, we'll wrap up in a minute. But it's that the energy in that room, seeing it live was just something else. I heard the sobbing of women next to me and the crying. And for some of them, I think I'm not sure if I've said this while we've been recording, but I know we stood before we started that there was a couple next to me who was seeing it for the very first time.
mm,
And that's one
mm,
thing. And I remember, and you said something really nice, which was that sometimes you reminded yourself that this, for some people, yeah, like
yeah,
people like me, like this, it's my 7th or 8th time seeing the show.
yeah, yeah.
But for some people, it's the first time.
For many
And
people,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
had
yeah,
to
yeah.
remind myself that I was like, that's right, they don't. A lot of people, you're either performing it or like you're living in this world of it a lot. But for most people, they're coming to see it for the first time, and yeah, and what never failed, and you would have experienced seeing this live. What never failed anywhere was the show. The show holds a pin drop. You could hear a pin drop
Mm,
throughout the whole.
yeah,
There's a bit of like giggles here and there at the start, but that second half really, you could, the And there were so many moments where I would look up and I would think how many people were sitting there, and you could hear a pin. Like I would
Yeah.
have to, in my mind, I was like, how are there that many people there and it's this silent? And that is the power of, I think, this piece, and the power of just the energy. You talk about energy, the energy exchange of, um, and I think that's the beauty of seeing this live, you know.
Oh, 100%.
I know the film's been made, and I'm so excited for
Yeah,
to see
yeah.
Cynthia, to
Think.
see Cynthia Erivo's heart. I really think she's got
Mm,
a beautiful heart, and I think she will do this story justice. Um,
mm,
but I do think seeing it live is, I think for everybody that has, I think it's a very special experience, and yeah, and I
mm,
think people know that, and, you know, that's why it's kind of got this following that it's got, because those who have seen it live have felt that in the room.
mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. But look, it's funny in Liverpool. I remember saying, a thought went through my head was, okay, because I was lucky enough to see it twice that week, and one of them was the last performance on the Saturday,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I can officially say that they took a picture of all of us. Helen Murray took the picture, who's also been on here as well. Hello, Helen. She took the picture of all of us in the theatre on their last night in Liverpool to say, like, it was a bit of a moment. They took one on the last night in London and the last night on Broadway, and then they did one in Liverpool. So yeah, to say that I'm one of those little faces in the background is pretty something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but but I
And she,
remember, yeah, but I remember thinking after tonight, I remember thinking after, am I going to want to? Is my time with Prima Facie, is it done? Is it done? And
yeah.
very, very quickly, the answer my soul and the people around me gave me was no,
No. I
no.
mean, I had that as well. Like the last show I did a few weeks ago was the last of the tour, and you know, there was this, oh, it's the last one. And I just
Yeah.
said, funnily enough, um, I think I've spoken about this before, but I have a sense of, and I talk about it in the book actually, last timeness. And
Hmm.
that is something that I would do every show like it was the last one. Because one, you never know what is around the corner. You never know if shows can be cat, whatever. Many things can happen for you to potentially go, okay, that was it, actually, you know.
Mm,
Um, but also it just brings you into the moment like nothing else. Like if you say to yourself before you walk on, this is the last time you get to say these words, you get to get this message across, you get to deliver this and connect with these people. So you give it, just forces you to give it your all in a heartbeat. You just go, right, well, that's the last time. And as you're speaking, you go, this is the last time I get to say it. So I have to get it through. I have to get my point across. Um, you can't know that you've got a whole second half. You've got
mm,
to just go, right, this right here needs to get through to these people right now. And so when I did perform it for the last time, I was like, well, this is just this is just normal, because this is the mindset I have every night. And I have had moments before where I've gone, yeah, that was the last one, and then
mm.
another year goes on. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But
but what I am excited about is just like I say in the book, you know, Prima Facie opened the door, but the conversation needs to walk through it now, and that's, you know, I'm very honored to be a part of that and to feel the calling of that, because not everyone does. Many people have done the show and don't feel that, and that's fine. The fact that it's on our hearts to continue the conversation is something I
100%.
think
Yeah.
really, really special, and really, it's on our hearts for a reason. And I think we need to honor that, you know,
100%. 100%.
whether
Yeah.
it's through play or you know, I'm excited to go back and take the book into schools. And, you know, the book was really born too from meeting high school students and just
Yeah.
wanting
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
able to give them more than what they had resources to. Um, because I could feel that, yeah, like the play just sort of lit the spark, but, you know, so much more needed to be said.
Mm,
Um, yeah.
yeah.
And it's a responsibility we take on, you know, you take it on by doing these podcasts, we take it on by having these conversations. And I've got a couple of other things lined up that I'm really excited about, which all
Mm,
flow on from this, that I'm sure will be a part 4 for us. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, and all been birthed from just really listening to what people are hungry for. And like I said, this was born from just going, wow, the conversation is so starved to continue, and that's
Mm,
what
yeah.
I saw.
And
Really saw that, yeah.
any small hints about?
Oh, I'm gonna keep it close to my chest at the moment
Okay.
because
Okay.
only because this is such a it's such a it's such a worldwide movement, and I really want to honor the part of me that is feeling that flow through and just protect it a little bit at the moment. But
Okay.
you'll definitely be
Keep me in the loop. Yeah.
yeah, of course, yeah.
Good, good.
And it's still just it's in all that beautiful conception process, and
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, we look forward to it. Just before we
yeah.
finish, I just want we'll be doing again another plug for the book, which I mentioned many, many times today. So yeah, again, thank you for the copy, by the way. I've had a chance to read it,
Oh,
and
my pleasure. You've got a physical one on its way.
yay.
Yay, yeah.
Yeah, please send it over. I would love to have it.
I
It'll
will,
be
of
a
course.
fine addition to the bookshelf.
Yeah.
Now I'll pass it around to people as well. So you've got to read this. You've got to read this and all that stuff. I've got a
Oh,
friend who works in a friend who's got a friend who works in therapy and all that stuff. So I think she'll love it as
oh, amazing. Yeah,
well. So
yeah. I've had a few people buy it on the road for to have in their offices and to have in
brilliant.
support organizations, and yeah, yeah. And like I said to you earlier, it was really born from the conversation that was, really hungered to be continued, and on the tour that I've just done, knowing I wasn't going to get as much time in Q&As as I would have liked, but knowing that this is the information that I kind of kept recycling with people, and I was like, okay, there's
Yeah,
some common threads here. And I think, as we've talked about tonight, I think my biggest thing was wanting to not leave a heavy conversation without hope, and to be able to go, right, there are things we can do.
yeah,
And if this place stirred anything in you from seeing it, and there are things we can do, and we all hold the power to be the change and to create change within our own lives, and that will ripple outward. It may be slow at first, but it's not immovable.
mm,
And if we continue to just sit back and wait for the law to change and wait for things like that to change, then we could be waiting lifetimes.
mm,
But to know that you have the power, and however you're raising your grandchildren, or supporting friends, or
yeah.
calling out, things, and again, like how, and really stepping into how we're valuing ourselves, not just as women, as people.
Oh,
You spoke to that beautifully, of knowing the 16-year-old. If you could go back and tell that 16-year-old boy in you now what you know now,
oh,
and going,
I just give
and
him a
that's what we get to,
hug.
yeah, exactly. But that's what
Yeah,
we get to do. We get to be that, and to be that voice we get to be the adult, the younger version of us needed, and whoever we speak to, and whatever platforms we have, and being that for ourselves, because it comes up all the time, in our lives. We're constantly up against things that we have to remind ourselves, and the little person in us that,
yeah, yeah. Oh,
one of the things I talk about in the book is, you ask how I look after myself, and one of the things I always do is I look into my eyes in the mirror at the end when I come off stage, and I see the little girl in me, and I
mm,
just tell her how proud I am. I had many moments on this tour when some performances felt really hard because of
mm,
the spaces I was in and
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
environment I was in, and it just took every ounce of strength to get to do it, and to be able to look the little girl in me in the eye and say, you did that, you were so scared and you did it anyway, and I'm really proud of you. And because sometimes I think it's her voice that's really fighting,
Yeah.
it's those little people in us that didn't have the words at the time, or didn't have the tools at the time to say those things. We do now. And
Mm,
it's like that 16-year-old in you didn't quite know
yeah,
how to say anything then. You now know how to have that conversation with yourself and with other people, and there's
yeah,
such power in it. Yeah.
yeah. No, I appreciate. Yeah, thank you for saying that. And it's a cliche, but it's very, very true. It's life is a journey. You know, you don't have all the as nice as it. Although maybe I don't know, as nice as it probably would have been. It would have been nice to have all this knowledge and all the answers at 16.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, you need to go through your adolescence and recognize things and fuck up and you know have these conversations and stuff, and then just you know be open and just be honest about what's going on, you know, and then you can make the transition quicker, you know, rather than hold on to it your whole life and then get to 99 and with all of life behind you and then just yeah. So you know, it's again, my mum has a good phrase where she says, "Would you rather hurt for 1 minute or for 1 year?"
Yeah.
And it's like, ah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll choose the minute, thank you.
Yeah. And
And yeah.
there's a powerful saying that, psychologists shared with me because I used to just pick their brains about all this. Like, well, what do
Mm,
you, and one of them said to me something they always tell survivors is that you survived the trauma, you will survive the healing. And because I think that sometimes people think that the healing is going to be bigger than the event. And that's why and admittingly, sometimes going through the court process can be really traumatizing. But that's a
mm,
beautiful thing to remind people when they're going through it. You've survived the worst of it.
yeah.
You will survive healing it, and you can revisit it without it. You survived living through it. You
Mm,
will survive what comes next, and there's so many incredible people who are living examples of that, and that's
yeah.
it's been, and like you were just saying, it's you wish you could have gone back and know what you know now, but there comes a point, and you're still so young, but there comes a point where you go, you have you have the choice to be that now
Mm,
for the next generation, and you are doing it by having this platform and by doing what you're doing, but like
mm,
that's what we get to do. We get to go, well, maybe I can help be the adult that I needed, or be the voice. I wish someone had said to me, you know what, all that stuff about losing your virginity at 16 is bullshit.
I know.
Just enjoy your life, you do your thing. And I reckon you at 25, however old you are, will be doing, I reckon I see you having your own podcast. Imagine that. Imagine if someone had shown you
Yeah.
and been the words to go, and started filling your mind with that stuff, not what date you lose your virginity.
Yeah.
But that's what we get to be for other people, and we all have people around us that we can influence. Hate that term, but we do.
Mm,
We don't have to be parents. We don't have to be actors on a big stage. You know, we have that ability with every single person we come in contact with,
mm,
and
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, 100%. You know, oh God, there's so many more stories keep popping to my head. I could have you all night,
yeah,
Cassandra. I really could. But
yeah.
I remember just one final thing before we get on to. We're just gonna. In fact, I'll get this in now, just very quickly. The book. So, is it technically out now, or is
It
there?
is. So it is. I have physical copies that can be. There's a link on. I can give you all the links, but New Zealand
Yeah,
Theatre
please.
Company.com,
Hmm.
.co.nz. We can you place orders there. It's available on Kindle.
Hmm.
I've just recorded the audiobook, so that'll be out
Hey.
probably in a week or two, which was a really that was a really interesting experience.
Mm,
I tell you what, to go from uh, reading Suzie Miller's words to learning them, performing them, to then uh, coming out of the stage door and being myself and holding space and having these conversations like we are now very openly, to then trying to put those conversations into a book form and to write it, to then going back into a studio and recording those words. It's just a wild ride of insecurity. Like the things that come up for us are just very potent, but and just all the different avenues we have now of storytelling,
mhm.
But I think what keeps coming back to me, and I'm sure it does for you as well, when we are judging ourselves or being a bit hard on ourselves, is what gives me a lot of faith is reminding myself that it's the message that matters, you know.
Mm,
not perfection. It's the message matters. What are we trying to say here, and what do we feel is coming through us to share? What is on our heart to share? And that's what matters more than something being perfect or sounding, and it's the same on stage. You can technically get everything completely perfect, but that's not what shakes the audience.
mm,
What shakes them is the message that you are getting across, your energy, your heart reverberating in the room. That is what is real, and that's what moves things and moves people.
mm,
And I know that's what I feel when I watch things or see things. People can go, "Oh, this was really good," and I go, "Well, my heart wasn't moved at all." Or I could see something that other people didn't like, and I think, "Wow, like our hearts are moved where they're moved," and that is
mm.
that is not a thing that the brain can uh, muster its way through. I
Mm,
think when you look from that place, and that's what I have done with this. I've just trusted that it was placed on my heart for a reason, and I'm just continuing it as I feel called to do, and as long as I feel called to do it, I will. Um, and like I said, not everyone has that, so
mm.
I feel very honored that this is the way it's coming out, and yeah,
Definitely, yeah. And I feel very honored to have you on here more than once, and well, I'm sure there'll be more conversations on here with both of us as well. But I know there will. So, but stay tuned, everyone, for the next one. I look forward to those new projects as well. But no, and also I think oh God, so many things. Also, I think the journey comes from having these from the difficult conversations, you're able to find the peace more than anything. And then
hmm
you realize by having these tough conversations, you realize again, the whole virginity thing is like, oh, I really believed all that bullshit. And then
yeah,
suddenly, but it comes from having these tough conversations. I know we touch on some very heavy stuff that in our chats on here, but it's important because that's where and again, you talk about it in the book, that's where the healing process starts,
yeah, and
and
everyone's got
yeah.
them. It's just normalizing those conversations, and if we can, if I mean, you brought up virginity, but that's just one aspect of when I have been living in the world of like sexual harm, and you're
Mm,
having these conversations, and you just realize people are desperate to have them.
mm,
They're really desperate to talk about it, but they just don't know how, or they're not being given the space to do so. But people want to get it out. They want to go, oh, and yeah, we've said it a million times. But yeah, when we share it, it dilutes it. It just dilutes it a little bit more and makes it a bit bearable to carry. Um, and you just realize you're not alone. You realize someone will hear what you said tonight and go, oh my gosh, I that's how I felt, or that's how I feel right now, or they've got a teenage son who they're dealing with that with. You just never know who will hear that and go, oh, right, that's
mm,
um, yeah.
indeed.
And the people that want to, and everyone's on their own timelines as well. That's the
Indeed.
whole
Yeah,
thing. So
everyone's
I
got their
think,
own thing. Trust it more than
yeah,
anything. And
yeah.
I want to get one last segment of the book out just before we finish. But I've got the final question for today. So this is brand new, actually. So it's the brand new
Woo!
finisher question. So this is the first one for yourself, Cassandra.
Oh, okay.
Part one, we say what's been an experience you'll never forget. Part two is like what makes you happy. And now this time, I think it's very appropriate, actually. What keeps you motivated to keep going?
Hmm. Um, this makes me very emotional because uh, we are in a very privileged position to be able to use our voices as we are right now,
Mm,
particularly as a woman. I am very aware that around the world, women's rights are being taken left, right, and centre. And so I feel like I have a responsibility to use mine any way I can because there's so many that can't. And that keeps me going with not only this message, but just in general as a woman in the world. being able to freely express myself. Yes, I get bumped up against injustices and all the things, but I still walk with a lot of freedom and a lot of power to use my voice. So I just want to keep that. Motivates me to just, I feel very motivated to continue to tell stories that matter. That I do feel it's very hard for me to fathom what potentially the trajectory of my work, but I do know it is based around, it has been very, this play has helped solidify in me that I want to be a voice for women, and that I want to continue to tell stories that bring injustices to light, that empower us as women, and just be, use my voice and my energy somehow to keep, fighting that war that we're in. And it just, that's what helps me get through all the exhaustion and all the things, is I think, like I said to you earlier, I might be feeling all this, but I thankfully my life isn't living it on a day-to-day basis. So to be a voice for those who don't have one is what motivates me.
Yeah.
And to just create a better environment for my daughter and all the the women coming next, and to honor the ones that have come and know that they did the best they could with what they had. And like we were saying earlier, like each generation, they only know what they know, and so it's just continuing to carry the torch and pass it forward. But that motivates me.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cassandra. Thank you.
Thank you. I love talking to you so much, and we always just chat so much. And
I
so
know,
raw.
yeah. No, again, thank you again for being so generous with your time, and I really do appreciate it. I know it's into your Friday evening over there in New Zealand, so I do appreciate it. Thank you. Oh no,
Yes.
wait, it's
Saturday.
Saturday. Sorry,
Saturday.
yeah, Saturday. Yeah,
Yeah.
Saturday. Yeah, of
Got
course,
me.
Saturday.
Yeah.
The
That's all right.
days are just like a blur at the moment. Anyway, but just before we go, I want to get this piece of the book out. So this is like another little taster for everyone who's watching or listening. So I couldn't read that as much as I would love to read this whole section out. It would take up a little bit too long, but I've kind of taken one chunk and put it with another chunk in the same chapter. But this, I suppose the title of this sort of edit is, well, to use your words, actually, it's To My Fellow Artists. And I think this is a good place to finish. So these are Cassandra's words in her book. So, and, once it's available, guys, go and buy it because it's beautiful. So, to my fellow artists, there is something sacred about the work we do. It is not just performance. It is not just craft. It is not just entertainment. It's an offering. Artists lend their nervous systems to stories that need a body, that allow emotion to move through them so others do not have to carry it alone. They stand at a threshold between the unspeakable and the seen and say, I will go first. This is service. And I believe that this is where the future of storytelling lives, in a work that is embodied, conscious, protected, and alive. To every artist reading this, your work matters. Your body matters. Your well-being matters. The world needs you to carry. The world needs what you carry, but it also needs you whole. Performing Prima Facie changed me, not only as an artist, but as a woman, a mother, and a human being. Night after night, I offered my body as a vessel for a story that carried centuries of silence. I stood alone on stage, but I was never alone. I could feel the presence of every woman who had swallowed her truth to survive, and every person whose body had carried something they never chose, every voice that I had learned to quiet itself because the world was not ready to listen, and my body felt all of it. It felt the activation. I felt the activation. The grief, the rage, the urgency, the tenderness. I feel the weight and the responsibility of speaking something that could not be unsaid once it was voiced. I learned through necessity how to care for myself in ways I'd never been taught, how to complete stress cycles, how to honor the nervous system and make this work possible, how to treat my body not as something to push through, but as something sacred, something that deserved care before, during, and after the offering. That learning did not stay on the stage.
Aw.
Brilliant,
So
man.
special hearing you read it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, I think you're right. That sums up this conversation quite beautifully because it encapsulates, the toll this work takes, but also the purpose of it, and that is what is just at the heart now for me is everything I want to do moving forward is what is the mission of this story? What is, our lives are short and the things we make, our creative endeavors, they take a lot from us. Um, so I think being able to choose them consciously and to choose what we want to put out there and be a voice too is
Mhm.
a really empowering place to be as an artist too, to not be at the mercy of just taking what jobs come our way, but actually going to hang on, if I could choose which stories I want to tell, what would they be? And that's definitely where I want to head. And yeah, I'm so grateful to have been one of the many conduits for this story.
Yeah,
It has changed my life, and yeah, yeah, I still think that the journey, has only just begun.
indeed.
And to rewind that back to that, like you, the thing that we felt upon us from the start. It's when I sit back sometimes and see how that's manifesting, I think, wow, there's something bigger. I've always said there's something bigger at play here, and
Mm.
I get little tastes of what it is, but it's just continuing to unfold, and that's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Mm.
I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, honestly, Cassandra, again, I could have you here for another 2 hours. Honestly, I just love talking to you. I really, really do.
Me
And
too. Me too.
yeah, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. As always, you're welcome back whenever you want. And I look forward to next time. And I look forward to hearing about the new secretive things that you have planned.
Yes,
So
yes,
keep
yes.
me in
I
the
can't
loop
wait
with
to
that.
share. I can't wait to share.
Indeed.
Mm.
So yeah, guys, go get yourselves the book again, Sex, Power, and Prima Facie: When Art Becomes Activism, and the Creatress Rises, of course, by Cassandra herself. Go get it now. Go get the audiobook. Get it on Kindle, and of course, more updates on that. I'm sure Cassandra will put on her Instagram, everything in between. Link is down below, and I'll put the New Zealand Theatre Company and stuff as well below. I'm not sure if I put them there before, but I can always just re-add it, so it's all good. Yeah, Cassandra, thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure seeing you again as always, and again, for so generous with your time. And honestly, just thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank,
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
no, no, always, yeah. And yeah, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic podcast. I'll be back very, very soon. And yeah, Cassandra, until next time, thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.